What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another Your Story. We're here today with the legend, Jeff Davis from Extreme Detailing out of Virginia Beach. Welcome, brother.
Thank you, man.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Tell us about your drink of choice.
Today it was a coffee with 4 French vanilla creamers in it.
Keep it nice and sweet.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's bright and early right now. We decided to do the Your Story on the front end of the day. We usually do it on the back end, but we know that you have pretty incredible stories. We want to give you as much time as possible to talk about it.
I definitely appreciate that. I'm known to be long-winded, so
All right.
bear with us.
We'll have some fun with this. So the cool part about knowing you and over the years, and obviously some stories that you've told us over the last couple months, is you've been through a life so far. But to be where you're at today is super powerful and inspiring. And you do a lot for kids now too that are coming through programs. But
Right.
It all started back in high school, I guess it was, right?
Yeah, pretty much. I guess you could say that.
Yeah. So give us a little background on part of your story, in the come up.
Okay, so basically I was born and raised in Virginia, but about 13 years old, we moved down to Raleigh, North Carolina. And it was supposed to be a lot more work there. My father was a builder, my grandfather was a builder, so construction is kind of my family trade. And at about 13, there was a big boom in Raleigh. It's like the #1 place to live in America at the time. So we packed up and went down there, and we were supposed to be living a much better life, and we struggled with a lot of like financial issues. I won't say we were like growing up in the hood really, but my parents just didn't have, didn't know a lot about financial, financing, financial literacy, that's the word I was looking for. And we got down there and we didn't have a lot of family and a lot of support. Here in Virginia, we had tons of aunts, uncles, cousins' houses that we could go to, if we were struggling or whatever. Well, when we got to Raleigh, we didn't have a lot of family.
Was he following a dream?
I
Or
guess
you
you
just
could
need to
say
get
that.
out, start over?
I can't tell you, I
Yeah.
can't speak for my pops, but and me being 13, my knowledge of it was there's gonna be a lot more work for him in Raleigh. So we get to Raleigh, and without support, I'm now like 13, 14 years old. When we're struggling, we start taking to the streets. When you're a young man, people don't really take you in. They're like, oh, you're a little man, you're a little boy, like you gotta grow up, you gotta become a man. And it doesn't really work like that. So took to the streets, and I guess you can kind of say I perfected it. And between like 14 to 17 years old, I turned into a full-fledged like street guy, and was pretty successful at it.
To what degree? How far can you go into it?
Without incriminating myself, I guess you could say I kind of owned the city.
Yeah.
There was a lot of my products moving throughout the entire city. I could be at parties chilling and smelling the air like, man, that's my stuff right there.
Wow. So you knew it.
Yeah. It was heavy, but it sounds all glamorous, but it's not.
Well, especially at that age, I can only imagine it. Being from 13 to 17, basically.
Yeah.
Yes. You're still a child at that. Trying to figure out life.
Exactly.
So was there certain people that brought you in that started teaching you the trade, or did you just kind of learn it on your own?
Yeah, my older brother was pretty much a street guy, and he was 6 years older than me. My next to the oldest brother. Got 2 brothers, but he was pretty much a street guy, so I kind of just followed in his footsteps. But looking at it now, I was kind of a nerd, and I didn't realize I was that good with math. So what other people were trying to do, I did it really well. And I figured out, pretty much everything I learned about business, I learned it from being in the streets. And, I figured out the mathematics and just put business models behind it in the streets. And next thing you know, I'm like 14, 15 years old. I'm a big businessman. I have employees, So it was kind of crazy.
So what did that kind of transition into?
Well, what happened was the older I got, a lot of people didn't like the fact that I was so young and in control of so much, so it started a lot of animosity, and then you start getting rivals and things like that, and the streets just kind of got a little crazy. People were getting hurt, people were dying, people going to jail, prison, everything else. So by the time I got to 17, I had this banging connect that, it set me off. And it was at the point to where we were about to start like branching out into other states and stuff. And I really looked at it and evaluated life and was like, I can't do this forever. So I got to get up out of here. And about 20 years old, I decided to make a change.
And where'd you go?
So I ended up leaving. My oldest brother was out in Wisconsin. He got a full ride basketball scholarship at Viterbo College, and he went out there and never came back. I don't blame him. It wasn't much to come back to, but he got out there and pretty much built the foundation. And I was like, you know what? I probably should go out there to La Crosse, Wisconsin. It's out in the mountains. Nobody's there. Nobody knows me or knows what I'm about. So it's a chance to kind of reinvent myself. And so I took off, went out there, opened up a record store. Ran that for about 3 or 4 years. I was a musician too, so I wrote a lot of music, performed a lot, and I was performing and entertaining out there in Wisconsin, really.
Wow.
Probably one of the peak times in my music career. You wouldn't believe it in such a small city.
I was gonna say, yeah, Wisconsin, especially in Wisconsin. I mean, what kind of music were?
It was all pretty much gangster rap.
Yeah.
I consider myself to be an artist, but I was more so like a street guy who had a story, and I had a musical talent, and I was kind of telling my story through the music. So it was kind of like an outlet for my pain.
Wow.
And I didn't realize it at the time, I was just living the life, and but when I look back on it now, it was really like an outlet for my pain and everything I was going through.
Yeah.
So I had a pretty frustrating album called Duck Season. At that time, I was dealing with a lot, leaving the streets. There was a lot of people mad that I had left and everything, and I was just dealing with a lot of animosity from a lot of people. And so it made me make this pretty harsh album.
I can imagine. I mean, before you left Raleigh to go up to Wisconsin, did you prepare for that loss? Were you basically putting other people into power, or did you just basically shut down and leave?
Shut down and leave.
Yeah.
I didn't want, I had a little brother, so to speak. May he rest in peace right now. He ended up killing himself.
Oh.
He was my girlfriend's little brother, but we were together for so long that he became like my real little brother. He was the main one who knew my whole operation, and he wanted to take over. But I was like, I can't leave this in his hands. And something happens to him. I'm sitting at his funeral, talking to his parents, and I was like, I can't do it. So I packed up and I just left. A lot of my houses at the time were furnished, so I just pack up my clothes and disappear overnight, month-to-month leases. So kind of lived like that.
Wow. What about your parents?
Parents, they knew, but they didn't know.
Yeah.
When I left a vehicle to them. My parents were pretty much struggling still, so most parents, their parents buy them a car, when they turn 16 and all that. Mine was the opposite. I was 16 buying my parents a vehicle. So when I left, their vehicle had just broke down again, and I left them another vehicle that they thought I had sold, because every time I got another vehicle, I was telling them that I traded the other one in, but I really wasn't. They were always paid for, and I just left them at one of my places. And when I got ready to move, I was like, you know what? I think I should just face the reality and leave this vehicle with them so they're not stuck without one. And so at that point, I just dropped it off, and I was like, hey, here's a vehicle. I know I told you I traded it in some time ago, but I didn't. I'm leaving, and I want y'all to be able to, have some transportation. So here's a vehicle. Don't ask no questions.
Wow. And then fast forward to Wisconsin too. So now you basically have a whole life changing. You go from the streets to now producing music, record company, hanging out with your bro.
Yeah.
Were you performing anywhere as well?
I had probably 2 or 3 shows a week. So
Damn.
What I did there was I befriended all of the local artists, and I booked the venues and gave them a platform to perform, which is pretty much what's going on in the city forever.
Dude, you always know, there's a business in every opportunity.
Every opportunity, man. So I booked the venues and gave them a platform to perform, which also gave me a platform to perform. And I was performing, having a good time. And it went on about 3 years. Back then, matter of fact, 8 Mile was out with Eminem. The whole rap battle thing was big. This is back in 2000. And I ended up starting my own rap battle. It was called Big Cats Rap Battles. And it went on to I think episode 40.
Damn.
Yeah, over a course of 3 years. And then one time, the bars and venues and stuff started calling me, and they wanted my show at their venues because it was entertainment. It was so much entertainment that me and the guys who were battling each other used to come to my record store and meet prior to the event. And we would already prearrange who was gonna battle who. And I tell them keep it down, not turn this into no fighting stuff, because if the name becomes known for violence, then we ain't gonna be able to get a lot of venues.
Yep.
So I tried to keep it to a minimum, but sometimes we get out of control.
Yeah. So why didn't I end up stopping at 40 or around 40?
It wasn't, specifically for it. I can't even remember now. This was so long ago. But what happened was this one event. Well, this one club called me to go to their venue, and I kind of didn't want to go because I knew it was kind of like a hood crowd, and I tried to keep my show to like a good, diverse, mixed crowd, so it just wasn't too dominated, with the hood crowd because a lot of stuff can pop off, and I don't know this area. This isn't my hood, so I had to kind of go where I was accepted, and I went to this one club. It's called Club Millennium. And this guy named Red, he always comes by the shop before our events, and he just makes sure that we're like having the event and everything. And he kind of gives me like a pass, like, all right, you cool, man. Like I'm gonna be there to support you.
He's just a big fan.
Sorta, yeah. It's kind of like acknowledgement. It was like, hey, I'm gonna allow you to have this show.
Got it.
You know what I'm saying? So to come by is kind of like showing respect. Like, you cool with me, you all right. As long as I'm cool, everybody be cool with you. So Red, long story short, Red comes to the event. He ends up getting in a scuffle with this guy on the dance floor. Now Red got a lot of love around there, so they kicked the other guy out, and Red stayed up in the club. But the other guy got back in the club somehow and shot Red 4 times in the chest at the event. And so I remember seeing him because I'm at the front. I'm the club promoter, so I'm up there greeting everybody as they come in, and the crowd starts rushing out. And I got pushed way out to like the street because it's like a sidewalk and then the street's behind me. So I got pushed out to the street, and then the people are coming out and they're splitting both ways. And I remember seeing Red come out, and he ran. He went to my left, and I was looking at him. He's like a light-skinned guy with like red cornrows and blue eyes. You're gonna recognize him. You can't miss him. And so he came out and he took off. He went to my left, and I'm like, oh, there's Red. And then as I'm like looking in my peripheral, he kind of drops on the alley like beside the club. And I was like, dang, like, is he okay? Like, what's going on? So I run over there, and he had like just rolled over. When he rolled over, his eyes were already like just gone. I mean, I'm like looking right in his eyes, but he's looking like past me. And he was pretty much dead already. I seen like some little holes, not like you see on TV, you know? I seen some little holes in his shirt, and I was like, dang, like, did he get shot? And yep, he was dead right there on the scene. Wow. So when that happened, I kind of like felt responsible. Like now I'm not the dope boy, but I'm the guy creating the environment that the dope boys are hanging out in. And I was like, damn, I'm still on the same side of the fence.
Yeah, I mean, I can only imagine going from Raleigh and leaving that, and then going to Wisconsin thinking that you left it.
Yep.
And then getting trapped right back in it.
It's crazy, man. I like, that was the point where I separated legal from what's right. Because everything I was doing in Wisconsin was legal. Everything I was doing in Carolina was illegal. So I left an illegal life to go live a legal life. I get there thinking I'm living on the right track because everything I'm doing is legal, and then this guy ends up dead, and I'm just like, dang, I'm still on the same side of the fence. People are still like dropping around me. And so at that point is where I separated like doing what's right from what's legal. And so I got into this whole like positive mindset, and I was ready to leave Wisconsin because I realized that everything I had built, I built from negativity. And I was like, I'm done. Like, if it ain't positive, I don't want nothing from it. And I packed up my record store. I called the landlord, and I was like, hey, you can have everything in it. Like, except that is the end of my lease. I was like, you can sell everything, whatever. I don't want any money from all of that stuff because I know.
So you left all the records and everything?
Everything, the whole store. I called Salvation Army. I had this 3-story crib out there. It was kind of like the party, the Grand Central after all of our events and stuff. And we even had a shooting range in the bottom floor for BB guns, of course.
That's awesome.
And we had like Xbox, pool tables, all this stuff. And I called Salvation Army, told them come get all of that, everything. I was like, I don't want to sell it. I don't want the money from it, anything. And I packed up. By the time I left Wisconsin with like $500 in an old Benz in a backseat full of clothes. I called my brother that was out there. And I was like, hey man, I'm gone. He's like, what? Like, you gone? Like, after all this stuff you done built? I was like, I gotta go, man. I was like, I realized something And I think I know what it takes to be successful now, but I need to be in a place where I'm gonna spend a lot of time, because it takes a lot of time and consistency to really make something, successful. And I wanna be doing something that's positive. And so that's when I packed up. I came back to Virginia because I was like, I don't wanna go to Carolina. Too many people know me there. I've never been in the streets where I'm from, my hometown. And I said, this would be a good place to really start over. So I came back here with $500, an old Benz, and moved in with my sister.
Wow. Do you think that having that reset is what you needed? Like if you came back with everything you had there, even everything you brought up there?
Yeah, I would have never realized it.
Yeah.
So it's like everything I went through led me to where I'm at today.
Yeah.
And I get back here, and which is probably your next question. What happens when I get to Virginia, right? So
why am I even here?
You can go now.
Thank you. God's been fine. I'll see you later.
Yeah, so I get back to Virginia, and I'm kind of struggling really mentally. I'm battling like a lot of demons. You know what I mean? Because you kind of leave this lifestyle, but all the demons and the karma and everything still following you, and all the thoughts. Like all the things that you experienced and you've seen, it's kind of just like roaming through your head. And my sister was a program director with this foster care agency called Community Solutions. And so I worked like 2 or 3 jobs prior to this, but I started getting frustrated working all these jobs, and especially mentally it was challenging. I'm used to being the guy in the club popping bottles and turning up and having endless funds and money that was so easy to make that I didn't really care about it, to now I'm like busting my tail working 3 jobs just to make rent. And I'm still struggling to make rent. And my sister was she's a college junkie, she had 2 masters, 1 bachelor's, so she's living,
And she was living here in Virginia.
She's living here. But, me with my pride, I'm like, I'm still gotta match our rent. Like, if we're going half, I'm going half. Like, I don't need no help. And she was kind of feeling bad for me, so she tried to give me money here and there. I'm like, no. Nah, if I'm broke, it's because I need to sit still. I need to process things. And so I just work on music in my spare time. I just stayed in the house a lot and worked all day. And at one point, I started getting really frustrated. And I found myself sitting outside of 7-Elevens watching people come out. And what I mean by that is looking at pockets, seeing who had money, because in the streets, if you went down, you just went and you robbed somebody and get you some money and get back in the game. So it's hard to fight that mentality of trying to do it the right way, because it's frustrating, right? And I'm glad I'm actually able to tell this, because if there's anybody out there dealing with the same mentality, you just gotta stay focused. You gotta keep going. But I told my sister about it, and she took me serious. She was like, okay, I know he ain't playing. I'm starting to get frustrated. Let me see what I can do to help. And she went to her boss. She was like, hey, you think you could hire my little brother? He's real good with construction. My family was builders, blah, blah, blah. She said, he got a little criminal record and stuff. If you can vouch for him, I'm sure he can do something for you. And at the time, they were just introducing the idea of vocational services. So
what is vocational services?
It's basically to put it in English, it's job readiness.
Okay.
You're just preparing people for the working environment. And so they were
that are coming out of certain situations.
Yeah.
Okay.
From disabilities, learning disabilities, behavioral issues, and mental disabilities. So that's the populations that you deal with for vocational services. So they were just introducing the idea, and they wanted to do it through construction.
Cool.
And it was perfect. It was like, This is a perfect fit. This guy has a construction background. So yeah, let's bring him on in. And I'll never forget the day I got the job. I still had cornrows at this time, cornrows all down my back. Had hair for 16 years. And I'm taking my cornrows out while I'm driving this old Benz still, right? And I'm on the way to the basketball court. I had just got off from another job. I was taking my hair out because it was towards the weekend, and I was about to get my hair redone. So I'm taking my hair out oh yeah, I'm gonna go play ball today. Let me just take my hair out. My sister calls, I'm driving. I'm driving with one hand, I answer the phone, put it on speaker. I'm still taking the cornrows out, and she's like, hey, my boss wants to meet you. You need to come up here. And I'm like, what? Come up here, I got half of my cornrows hanging out, you know, got a fro on one side and cornrows on the other, and you want me to come up there? And I had on gym shorts and a wife beater at that. So she's like, yeah, just come on up here. I'm telling you. I was like, okay, you sure? I went up there. I was like, okay, at least let me get the other side of my cornrows out. So I went up there.
Just go
big blowout. It's all curled up. It kind of looks kind of pretty. You know what I'm saying at the time, because when you take them out, your hair's all wavy and stuff. But it's like super long. It's hanging all over my shoulders. I show up like Snoop Dogg, basically.
You just call your hair pretty?
Yeah, just a little bit.
All right, just wanted to clarify that.
I'm grown enough to say it now. So, man, I show up and I'm feeling like all insecure. Like, man, I know these people gonna be looking at me like I'm some thug, you know what I'm saying? And I walk in to sit down with this interview with the general contractor. It wasn't the owner of the company at the time. And he was like, yeah, I heard you were, going to play basketball, so I ain't paying attention to your clothes, man, but I want to talk to you about some construction and everything. And, we just basically had an interview about different tools and, things I'm capable of doing. And I left there with a job, and I was starting like $11 an hour, and I was hyped at the time, like, oh yeah, I tried to act like I was, oh, okay, yeah, that's cool, but when I left, I pretty much did like a Toyota outside,
That's
the
great.
old commercial?
Yep.
Toyota. So,
is this like mid-2000s, by the way, just to get some context?
yeah, this
there.
is like 2004, 2005.
Okay.
So I'm like 24, 25 years old.
All right.
And I walk outside, I'm like, yes, finally. So I can let go of some of these jobs and get some time back. And because, when you're working, getting paid by the hour, you're trading time for money. Yep. So the more you need that money, the more time you got to spend, you pretty much lose your life. You're just working. And I was so happy to get a job paying, over like minimum wage. Because with a criminal background, it's hard to get a job. You can't just go out here and get a banging job. Even if you had a degree, you still can't go and get a banging job. You see what I'm saying? So, with a criminal background, you always end up in like a physical labor atmosphere. And when I got this gig, it paid like almost double what I was making before, so I was just happy to have some time, like, okay, now I can probably start to.
I'm sure you'd enjoy a lot more too.
Oh yeah,
right?
yeah.
Building stuff?
Yeah, building stuff, I love that, so it's my childhood. And I didn't know really that I was pretty good at building stuff too, and I was really physically fit, because I played a lot of sports and everything, and I was really fit, so I came in and started the job and just started taking over. And I guess I'll stop there before I just keep rambling about the job.
I was gonna say, it seems pretty common for you to jump into something and go all in.
Yeah, definitely.
It doesn't seem like it, like you just do things as a hobby.
Yeah, as I
even
say,
when it's a hobby.
I take it to the extreme.
Well, one part too, before you jump in, because you mentioned it a couple times too, the criminal background, because I know that's obviously been a big part of your life too, and held you back, well, to some degree up until that point.
Right.
And I also know that, especially in today's times, how important it is from what you went through to kind of be a message to a lot of these other people out there.
Yeah.
So can you kind of give us a little background on exactly what happened?
Yeah, my first charge, I was 17 years old. It was graduation weekend. I was pretty much like, I wasn't graduating because I didn't really care at the time. I was just like, what am I gonna do? Who's gonna pay for college? So on and so forth. And I realized I had more money than most of my teachers, And I was like, this just isn't making sense. Like, who really cares about school? I got to survive. I gotta, most people are going to school and getting out, going home, playing video games, just doing their homework. I'm like catching a cab, back out to Southside and worried about what I'm gonna eat tonight. So my mentality was just totally different. And it was graduation weekend. I still went to celebrate with the normal guys, I still had normal friends. They didn't really know everything I was doing. If you weren't from the streets, you really didn't, catch on to what was going on. And so I went to hang out with all these guys, and we're chilling. And I brought in some weed, because I was the weed man. So I brought in some weed to hang out for the weekend. We got this hotel suite. And we're supposed to be chilling and just partying and hanging out. And we partied the first night, everything was cool. And then the next morning, we went to go get some breakfast. Wake up, everybody's got the munchies and everything, we're starving. So we all like, oh yeah, let's go get some breakfast. Well, my brother puts a bag inside of a coffee maker. And we come back from getting the breakfast and we're walking in, the maid's walking out. And she walks out with just ounce of weed. And she's like, holding it in the air, and we just bust out laughing. Like, we just thought it was the funniest thing in the world. Like, oh, snap, the maid found our weed. Like, oh, man, give it here. We didn't think nothing of it. So.
Did she give it back to you?
Yeah, she passed it right to us. And then we were about to, like, we were just chilling. We were just hanging out, lounging. And we're, like, hanging out. It was probably, like, 5 guys, maybe 5 girls. You know, we're just in there kicking it, doing what young people do.
Yep.
And next thing you know, somebody knocks at the door. So I look out the peephole, I see the hotel manager. And I'm like, oh man, it's the hotel manager. Like, put it out, man, open the window, like, try to get the smoke out of here, you know, cutting on showers, everything. I opened the door, and as soon as I open the door, SWAT teams come from around the sides of the door, and they're like, get on the ground. I mean, putting guns to our head, everything, man. You know, laid us down on the ground. It was pretty scary, really. And I mean, they thought we were like a drug cartel or something, you know, and they laid us down and searched everybody and gave us all a bunch of charges, you know, and that was my first felony, and it was a possession with the intent to sell when we truly had the intent to smoke. This was a smoke bag, but the possession with the intent to sell turned you into like a drug dealer. So that was my first charge at like 17, you know, before I was even. Actually, the court case went on until I was 18, and so by the time I was 18, they tried me as an adult and everything. And
how does that work? Because you were 17 before,
right?
When it happened?
They don't care, man. All these laws and everything, it sounds good, but when you get to court, it changes. And I mean, speaking of that, like if we were putting a message out right now, you know, the problem with the justice system is it's based on the cop telling the truth.
What do you mean by that?
If the cop lies, and when you get arrested, the cop has to write a statement. He has to write a report. If the cop writes anything in that report, it becomes truth. You know, it becomes law. And you're challenging what the cop has said. And then the lawyers don't want to fight the cops either. So you can't even find a lawyer to even really try to fight the case unless you have a lot of money. So you're kind of stuck in this system of you get these overblown or hyped up or just false charges, then you have to pay to defend yourself. And if you're coming from a background where you're not, you know, financially stable, then how are you going to fight these made up charges and blown up charges? So you're stuck. So then you end up having to take a plea bargain, which is saying, hey, I'm guilty. Will you give me a lesser sentence if I plead and say I'm guilty? And that's kind of like ritual, you know, especially for black people. You know, it's very, very common to get hyped up charges. You can't afford to fight it, and you end up just taking a plea.
So there was no option?
There was no option. I mean, you know, I guess I could have fought the possession with the intent to sell on that one, but there's a whole nother case where I was in the passenger seat of a car with my girlfriend. She picked me up from home because she was still in school the year after I was supposed to have graduated, and I was coming with her to pick up her car and take it and make some runs and things like that. And we pull up to the school where she was about to get out, and the school cop pulls up on us, and she starts panicking, and I'm like, what's wrong with you? Like, why are you panicking? Like, he's probably just gonna ask us some questions, you know, let us go. She's like, no, my brother's gun is in the trunk. And I'm like, what? Oh man, but I was like, well, they still ain't got probable cause to, you know, search the car, so we ain't got nothing to worry about. And the cop comes to her door, takes her out the car. They start talking, they close the door so I can't hear what they're talking about. And they start talking, and next thing you know, I see them walking towards the truck. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like what is gonna happen now? So they going in the trunk, they rambling back there, I don't know what they're doing. And next thing you know, they come to my door and they say, hey, Mr. Davis, we're placing you under arrest. And I'm like, okay, I better not say nothing. Let me just get out, you know, put my hands behind my back. They put me in the car. The only thing the cops ever said to me was they came back to the door in the cop car while I'm sitting in the cop car. They came to the door, opened it up, and they're like, hey, how do you take the clip out? And I'm like, clip? What are you talking about? He's like, the clip, how do you take the clip out? I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. And he shut the door, and that was it. Took me downtown. So I get downtown, I read the statements. This is where the statement comes back. The statement says, Mr. Davis stated that this was his gun. So again, now here I am, pent in a corner, not my gun, never touched it, never even had it in my hand. It's not even found on me, okay? It's in the trunk of the car. I'm the passenger. Car is not even registered to me either, okay? My girlfriend is driving, so therefore she would assume responsibility for it.
Sure.
They pressed charges on her, but didn't arrest her. Big difference.
How does that stick though?
You get to court. Now I got to fight what this
same
cop's
thing.
statement was. And how are you going to fight this cop's statement? He already said that I admitted to it. Cop never even asked me any questions, period. Nothing, except for how do you take the clip out? And he says that I said that this is my gun. So I get to court, and it's either try to fight the charge. If you fight it and you lose, triple the time. If you take the plea, which is basically, this is what I ended up doing, was negotiating, like, okay, look, what's the plea? It's by this time, it's just like, it's common. You're just used to it, you know what I'm saying? And I'm just like, all right, what's the plea? Like, what's the deal? What are y'all gonna do? Because they just want somebody to close the case. If you got 500 cops making an arrest and only 250 of those cases stick, it looks like their jurisdiction is not doing well.
Sure.
So when they get to court, they just want to close the case. So there's these plea bargain deals where if you just come in and close the deal, close that case, they'll let you off. I've never done any jail time, anything. Just had this felony stamped on my record to close the case, and the judge knew it wasn't my gun. That's why they don't give you time. See what I'm saying? Did years of probation though, and then with these gun charges, this is a possession of a firearm on school ground. Looks even worse.
Oh, you're going to school.
Just because we're in the school parking lot. So listen to how that sounds. Possession of firearm.
Horrible.
On school ground. That sounds like I was like in school walking around with a gun.
Yeah, horrible. Yeah.
I'm in a car, gun in the trunk, not even mine, never touched it, got discharged, staying on the record. Yeah.
So you think everything you went through, though, I mean, not saying it's definitely not right, obviously.
Yeah, definitely.
But turned you to the man you are today, helping all these kids. You think without going through that, you'd be able to do what you do today?
Yep. I'm trying to basically, save other people from walking down the same path. And I mean, I have a son now that's 23, and I prepare him, and he has a gun permit, and concealed permit to make sure that he's already within legal rights to carry and do whatever he needs to do so he can't get charges and stuff pinned on him. And as rough as my background was, my son, far from the streets, nothing like it.
You've bettered a lot more lives.
Yeah, definitely, man. It starts with, your own kids, but then from there, I started working this job, just happy about, the $11 an hour. But
is that the building across the street you were talking about?
Right across the street.
Cool.
Right across the street. So, started with the like $11 an hour and thinking, okay, yeah, I'm just, finally getting financially free. But I fell in love with it, and I didn't realize.
What did you fall in love with?
Just, I thought my life was so rough until I started listening to all of the other kids. And when I'm hearing their story, it just takes the attention off of mine. And I start putting more focus on them. And then I realized it's just a lot of people going through a lot of different stuff. And I didn't know that I was I'm really a righteous fighter. You know what I'm saying? I grew up having to be tough and stuff, in the streets and coming from an urban environment. But I'm not just a guy who will just go out and brutalize an innocent person or something, you know what I mean? But when I have a reason to fight or stand up for somebody, that's what I'll do. I'm a righteous fighter, man.
You ever have to stand up for any of those guys over there?
Yeah, and I have to write reports on all the kids that come through the program.
Yeah.
Well, I understand the kids. In fact, we should probably talk about that.
Let's do it.
This is how I kind of homed in and became, I went from a laborer to the general contractor in their vocational services program.
So you were just working as if you were part of the program?
I was just working, as part of the program as a laborer. So I'm just there to do whatever the guy tells me to do.
Okay.
Pick up stuff, whatever. That's the construction world, it's laborers. You just do whatever somebody tells you to do.
Sure.
So I went from that into, within about a year and a half, 2 years, I was the director of vocational services. So it was like one day, this light bulb just went off. My boss was the general contractor. He kept getting hurt, kept getting sick with his shoulder. He's going out for shoulder surgery and all this other stuff. And I was like, what happens if he doesn't come back? I'm probably gonna be out of a job. So that's when I started paying attention, okay, what am I really supposed to be doing outside of collecting this check? And I went to the owner of the company and I said, hey, I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. But I was wondering if you can kind of break it down to me. I said, because whatever I get into, I'm usually good at it, but I just need to understand what it is I'm doing. The reason I didn't understand, because my boss kept disappearing. So we would start like remodeling projects. You know, we're doing home additions and building fences and decks around pools and things like that. But I kind of realized that if he doesn't get another job, what am I going to be able to do, right? Dang, I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought. Well, I'm trying to make my point here. But yeah, so I realized that if he doesn't come back, I'm not gonna be able to, you know, get another job or whatever. So I had went to the owner of the company and I'm like, hey, look, help me understand what it is that I need to do. If you can help me understand that, I promise you I'll probably be like really good at it. And at that point he said, okay, Jeff, let me get back to you. He came back in about 2 weeks and gave me this book. It was a book about vocational services. And I just took it home, put it by the toilet, and read it when I was enjoying myself. And next thing you know, this light bulb just went off. And I was like, I understand this. Like, I can do this. I can create a program. And I actually realized that the program that we had wasn't sufficient.
Because you were working in it? Because you
No, the way that the program was structured, it wasn't good. Because the kids needed to be able to complete something every day. And the projects that we were working on sometimes took months, weeks to complete. Some of these kids would be in the program 1 week and disappear the next. So I was like,
so jobs would be incomplete or not completed.
So they never still had a chance to complete something. And so I was like, we have to design a program to where every day the kids can complete something.
Cool.
And I was like,
And how do you notice that? Just from reading this book?
Yeah, I don't know. It just triggered one day. You know, I was reading the book and it just I don't know. I'm telling you, like one day, all of a sudden, my brain just started working.
Yep. I think your brain was working fire. Damn well.
But it just happened.
It came back, yeah.
Yeah, and then I was like, okay, they own about 5 properties. They're also a foster care agency, and they have like 60 foster parents. They all have grass that has to be maintained. I said,
I get where this is going.
I wonder if I could create a landscaping company. You know, because entrepreneurship was my gift. So it was nothing for me to create another company. So instead of just going to the boss and talking about it, I wrote it out first. So at home, after working, you know, all day, I would go home and I just start writing. And I came back in one day and spilled it out to him. And I basically told him how his program sucked. And he's looking at me like, well, thanks, Jeff. Like, where are you going from here? And I was like, well, I got another idea. And I'm like, whacked out this paper on him. And he's like, he looked at it. He was like, oh my gosh, like, this is amazing. I like it. And I agree. He said, let's go. And just like that, I left that meeting like, okay, so you gonna give me a credit card or something? Go buy all this stuff? And that's what happened. Opened up this little account.
So you bought some mowers, weed whackers?
Yep, bought some mowers, some push mowers and stuff like that just to start and, you know, to kind of build a little faith in it. And it will get him to build, you know, have a little faith in me. Long story short, it's about 3-4 years of that program. You know, we evolved until this building right here became vacant. And this was an old mechanic shop. It was beat up and run down. And by this time I had already like moving through these programs at this point, because this was the 4th program that I had written. So I had wrote.
Fourth program meaning the mowing business or the landscaping was the 4th program. You had 3 priors.
Yeah.
Programs
well,
too?
the lawn care was the 2nd program. Well, it was really the first that I wrote.
Cool.
But in chronological order, I rewrote the construction program. I turned it more into a maintenance, just to maintain all the properties, change air vents, light bulbs, doorknobs. They always have to change a lot of key locks with foster care because kids move out and they have keys and they don't bring them back, so you end up having to change locks and stuff. So I turned that more into like a maintenance program, and then I really structured the lawn care program to cut a lot of the foster parents' properties and a lot of the properties that the foster care agency owned.
Great.
And that took off. And then I realized this other thing that, like, we can't help people unless they tell us their dream. So I was like, if these kids don't tell us what their dream is, we're giving them a dream. So what are you doing? And that's what I noticed was going on in a lot of the meetings. They're always trying to convince the kids what to do. And I was like, no, you got to talk to the kid and get to understand them. Let them tell you their dream, then you can help them get there. And so I wrote a program called Dream. That turned into a career development center where now we have this computer lab where we're doing soft skills plus the hands-on training for job readiness.
Still going on today?
Still, well.
Or still up to a degree?
I guess we can get to that in the story. It's gonna come out. But it's going on, but they kind of went out of business at one point. But now they revamped and they're doing it again. But so that turned into a whole computer lab. And now we're doing soft skills like interviewing techniques, job seeking strategies, resume writing, cover letters, all this stuff. And then that evolved into this building. This building became vacant and my boss came to me like, hey Jeff, come up with something else. We need something for males and females because now we're really starting to diversify and this program is blowing up. And he was like, come up with an idea. Now I wanted to expand the lawn care. I wanted to go more into commercial. I wanted to use this to store all of the equipment in. And he didn't like that idea. So he fought me tooth and nail. And I was like mad. I was so mad because we had put so much work into the lawn care that I couldn't believe he wouldn't, let us go forward. And that's when I realized like, I'm too much of an entrepreneur. Like I can't be stuck under somebody not allowing me to move forward. And so he was like, I always say that the detailing was his idea, and he says it's my idea.
It's a good team right there.
Yeah, neither one of us take the credit, but it was really his idea. He was like, what about like washing cars and da-da-da, right? And I was like, okay. So I looked into that, but I also had to have something for the females. So I knew this other lady who had a cosmetology school. So I brought her in on a meeting. My boss walks in on the meeting. Next thing you know, we got a cosmetology school. So, and I was like, well, if we're doing cosmetology, that's like real college. I said, well, we better go a little further than a car wash. So that's when I looked into detailing. And I looked up Detail King and they had training programs and all of that. So I went out there, started taking the training, me and one of my employees, which just happened to be my cousin at the time. And we took the Detail King training course. And by the time I got back, in the training, like after seeing the training and going through 3 days of this training, I was like, oh my gracious, like
you're ready.
This is gonna take a lot of time, a lot of effort, and if I'm gonna do this, I need ownership. And so I got back and I was like, hey, I need ownership. I told him, my whole scenario, and I was like, look, I'm helping kids develop a realistic career plan that's leading to financial independence. Where's mine? I said, so I need some ownership. And I was like, if you turn me down, it's fine, because I love what I'm doing, I'm gonna keep doing it, but eventually I'm gonna move on. I was like, but consider what I said. And he took it to heart. And next thing you know, he gave me 33% of the company. And so we ended up having just this side that we're sitting in now, and the other side where our sales front is, well, our whole little lobby area, was a cosmetology school. So
you have both of them running out of here.
They were both running out of here when they first started.
Smart.
Customers used to be walking across the floor and, stitching cords, stepping over extension cords, water puddles and everything. And my office was in those little storage bins over there. Yeah, it was crazy, man. So we came a long ways. And then about 2 years in, I ended up buying them out. We took 100%.
Wow.
So
how cool was that day?
Yeah, it was pretty cool. The program
was he happy for that too?
Yeah, I mean the business itself wasn't worth much money because we were primarily a program. We were more like 80% program, 20% company.
Got it.
So to sell the company wasn't that expensive because it wasn't selling the program itself. The program is where all the value was at. So they didn't mind letting that part go, but they got stuck in the dilemma. I tied them into this other contract with the state. It was over like a $500,000 contract. Well, that same contract came back to bite them in the butt because the government basically said, hey, you're double dipping. We gave you this money to work with the kids in the community at large, but now you're working the kids in a company that you have ownership of. So that's when it came back to the table, and it was like, hey, what are we gonna do? And Jeff buying them out was the option. But then about a year after that, I was starting to get real powerful, financially, and they were like, hey, Jeff, like, we gotta cut you loose. Like, we can't, because at the time, this whole time, I'm on salary, right, with the false care agency. And they're like, Jeff, like, we gotta cut you loose. We got to let you just walk on your own and do your own thing. And so about a year after getting 100%, I was terminated from employment, and we developed a partnership.
Cool.
And then the partnership was supposed to, carry on or whatever. But during the course of all of that happening, I no longer was director of vocational services. I became the director of just the supervised working experience. That's what this was called. So now I'm kind of like detached from the company. And I was doing really good with my portion. They weren't. So they ended up getting a bad rep, and the city ended up contacting me and wanted me to do a solo contract with them. So the whole program ended up coming to me. And that's when the money
The whole program that you've been in for years and just being under.
Everything I had created, all of it ended up coming to me. And by that time, the cosmetology school had moved into another location because they were expanding and doing their thing. And so the front became empty, and I kind of took over the whole storefront. This was about the time I'm like, okay, now it's time to start like retailing and selling some chemical and having a bigger waiting area and all this stuff. And the state contacted me and wanted to do this solo contract, and I was like, what? And I was like, look, I'm loyal. So, these people gave me a shot, gave me a chance. I'm not about to just cut them out the deal. And they're like, no, it's not you, it's us. And I said, well, I'm not gonna do what they do. I'm only gonna do my portion, which is the supervised working experience. So the soft skills at this point, there's, we'll find somebody else to do it. And so that's what happened. And when that solo contract came, a lot of revenue started coming in. And when that came in, I started revamping, started remodeling, putting in sidewalks, putting in storefront windows. I mean, this building was run down.
Yeah, it's beautiful now. There's a lot, you can tell.
It was beat down, man. It was really bad. So, I probably put a course of $100,000 into this building in the course of like 10 years.
That's a lot of money.
And it's not my building. But I kind of look at business differently. Like, if it's gonna enable me to, produce enough revenue, who cares whether I own it or not? I can invest in other things. So I didn't let that stop me.
And how many kids have gone through your program now?
I'm not even sure.
Are you still having?
Yeah, well, COVID kind of shut a lot of stuff down.
Sure.
But I probably had over a course of maybe 13 years, maybe 200 something kids.
Wow.
Yeah, and right now we just started back up with the disability kids with the city of Norfolk. These are kids with their mental disabilities are so severe. They're still in high school at like 21, 23 years old, and they're about to age out of high school. So they try to like get them prepared for the working environment. And we're a company who just accepts them in, and some of our level of detailing has really grown from 13 years ago. So now they can't really do a lot of the work that we do because of their level of coordination, but we still have them clean windows, clean bathrooms, sweep the floors, shampoo some carpets and things like that.
Yeah, we have a shop out by us, Classic Rock, and he does the same thing.
Same thing? Huh?
Yep, same thing. He hires every man that works for him is disabled.
Wow.
But he's built a whole business around it, and I'm so happy that I know your story as well now, because I can add that connection, because I've always wondered if other businesses are doing it, and I've seen his success not just with financially, but with actually the men and women that work with him.
Right.
Just seeing them actually have a purpose, which I never even thought about before, and it's just really cool.
I think every company should be doing something.
100%.
To give back.
I'm already thinking about it now.
Yeah, every company should be doing something. It's just look at it financially. Everybody needs to, a company, once you're successful anyway, you need to start putting some money, wasting money on something, right? To decrease your profit margins and things of that manner. Well, why not filter that into something good?
Yep.
And I feel like it's kind of like what we're doing right now, your story. I was talking to Mike last night about it, and I was asking, I was like, hey, is it translating into money? And he looked me straight in the eyes, and he's like, that's not why we're doing this.
No, it's not.
He said, I really just want, to give back and give people a chance to tell their story. And I was like, that's beautiful.
It is.
Yeah. So.
We all know Michael's not in it for the money.
Yeah.
Which is the coolest part. That's why when this whole opportunity came to be what it is for all of us here, all of our lives have changed because we don't have that money focused. It's about just truly allowing, businessmen like yourself to share the story outside of business. Obviously, everything leads into the business.
Exactly.
But from what you came through to where you are today, in my mind, I would say there's no way. There's no way Jeff could have went through what he did and been the man that he was at the age of basically 13 to to where you are today.
Right.
And so there's no way in hell. That's a thought that goes through my mind.
I mean, I didn't think, I knew I was determined, but who would have known I'd turn it into this? And I'm already, like, I look at I do business consulting now, which is my next business venture coming up on a national platform. Yep. But I look at a lot of the guys that I consult with, and a lot of their issues is like hiring and maintaining employees. Mm-hmm. And my years in working in human services basically has enabled me to have this gift with people to where I can tolerate a lot more than most people can. And guys mess up, I don't just fire them right away. We sit down, we have talks, we have powwows, because I treat every employee like they're in my program. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. And so it's enabled me to build this staff and kind of like an empire. And now my son has jumped on at 23, and I basically have the next generation already taken over. So it's kind of like a beautiful thing where I feel blessed, even outside of any financial success that I've had. Being in that type of position is what's enabling me to even start this next company, because this company, the type of business I run and what I teach my guys is that you want to build your business to be able to run itself. Do you want to work for your business or work on your business? Yep. At some point, you want to be able to work on your business.
That was the biggest mental shift for me in the business. That's why I'm able to come here and leave the shop for multiple weeks and trust the team.
Exactly.
Right? And the other cool part is too, I was talking to your son last night, and he, obviously he sees this as being a very big financial gain for him too in a future, but he even wants to start his own business breeding dogs. Yeah. Which I think is so cool. I'm like, dude, you're 23 years old and you want to start breeding dogs? I'm like, hell yeah. Give me the call when the first one comes out. I'll buy a dog.
Let me tell you about that. So him and my nephew just moved up here about a year and a half, almost 2 years now. And he was dropping out of college. He was like, Dad, I don't like college, I want to do something else. I said, okay. I mean, I did it without college. College is not for everybody. He was playing sports, and the whole time he was playing sports, he loved school. Yeah. Well, when you took sports out of the picture, he was like, I don't like school. So I was like, all right, well, I mean, you have to figure out what you want to do. So long story short, he finally makes the decision like, hey, because he lived in North Carolina and Raleigh. That's where he was conceived at, and he went to high school there, went for his high school, everything. And they're state champions, I'm gonna put that in there. But after the sports was out the picture, he really didn't know what he wanted to do. And he finally said, okay, Dad, I think I want to come live with you because I want to see what success looks like. And I was like, oh, wow. And he's like, I think I need to be around success so that I can become successful myself. And I was like, okay, well, come here,
he's got Dad's blood in him when he's calling about that.
Yeah, I was hyped. Most people hear their kids are dropping out of school, they're devastated. I'm like, yes. Yep. Because I'm like, I hope he's picking up, this entrepreneurial spirit. Yeah. And it comes in and really dominates. But I told him, I was like, look, when you get here, I'm not just moving you through the ranks because you're my son. Like, you're gonna bust your tail. And if you ask him about it, he'll tell you, say, my pops is actually harder on me than he is anybody else because I'm his son. Yep. He expects more out of me than he does out of his employees. So he's got it pretty rough, actually. But he takes it, he takes that criticism. But the point that I want to get to was about the dogs. So I put him on this savings plan, and I was like, look, you got to save for a year. I want you to have enough savings that when you take off, you're not calling Pop saying, hey, I need some money for this, that, and the third. So I was like, if you break the rules, then you're done. I'm kicking you out. I won't kick him out, but I had to at least make him think I would. So he went through this whole plan, did everything he was supposed to, moves out, gets the place. 2 weeks later, he buys a dog. And I'm like, why? You're already on the dog, man? Like, you're supposed to wait, get you another, like a house where you can have a kennel and everything else. I mean, he could not wait. He couldn't wait. He's excited. He's bought ready. 2 dogs, male and female. They're not brother and sister. They're already prepping them to breed. Wow. And I mean, and they're puppies, they were puppies. Now they're getting big and everything. But so, yeah, he's so excited. Ain't playing.
No, he's not. I even asked him earlier today, when everyone was setting up, I said, are you ready to take over? Because whenever a father brings a son, and I'm guessing that, I was hoping that was your thought process. It seems to be like you taking over. He goes, I am. He goes, but I'm going to be breeding dogs too. Yeah. And that's why I looked at him. I was like, that's right. I was like, heck yeah, you are. It's so cool to see that, and you can just tell his excitement with it. So it makes sense.
That's what I tell all my guys, my employees, my son. I say, look, do not work for me forever. Nope. I was like, come in here, help us build this. let it become successful through your efforts, and go on to find whatever it is that you want to do. If this isn't it, at least perfect this, because how are you going to make something else successful if you can't even do it here? You know, I was like, use this as a testing ground, you know, and he took heed to it. And a lot of the employees that I have now, they're all on the same plan. They look at me like what? Don't work for me forever. I'm like, everybody has to elevate. If people at the top are not elevating, then how are the people at the bottom coming up? See what I'm saying? And that's what I teach, you know, within business consulting and for all my employees and staff. And they really appreciate that. Like, wow, like nobody's never told me that. I'm like, yeah, I don't want you to stay here. But if you do, by all means, you know, we'll make a good home for you. Because everybody's not entrepreneurial, you know, everybody doesn't want to elevate. There's a story called The Circle of 20. And basically in a working environment, if you have 20 people, 3 of them are leaders and the other 17 are like your followers. Well, you can't have a 3 without the 17, because if everybody was 3s, who's gonna do the work? Right?
True.
If everybody was 17, who's gonna lead them? So when I learned that this guy just randomly came in there, I was like, this is a message from God, because at the time I was mad with the 17s, right? Because you start classifying. Either people in the workplace, they're either one of the 3 or they're one of the 17. So I was getting really frustrated with the 17s because I thought that I could make every 17 turn into a 3. And when this guy broke that down to me, I was like, wow, that's deep. And it really took the frustration away. And it made me respect the 17s a lot more. You know, and you find the 3s and you know, those are the ones that you bring to the managers meeting. You don't bring the 17s to the managers meeting.
That's E-Myth was a book that's kind of the same philosophy too. That's in that same realm. And that's what shifted our business too, because I always thought I could turn a tech into a manager.
Wow.
I was completely wrong on that. It wasn't that everybody doesn't want to manage. Some people just want to show up and do their 9 to 5.
And great entrepreneurs and great leaders, they can identify who those people are and put them in the right place.
Well, Jeff, you know, legacy's always been a big part of these your stories. It's the biggest part. We kind of have a pretty good take on what your legacy that you're leaving behind, but there's a next step for you too. Obviously, the business you're leaving to your son. There's a next step for your business, which is what you're going to be launching soon. Or I guess it's going to be launched by the time this video comes out. Right. So why don't you kind of give us a little
insight on it?
Yeah, give us a little bit.
I'm still building, it's still unfolding, so it might sound like it's a little all over the place.
Let's fast forward to 4 months from now. We know when it becomes the mecca that it's going to be.
Right. It's called Agape Pro, and it is a business consulting, training, and detailing supply company. So it's like, if I'm going to train you, I'm going to teach you. If I'm going to consult with you on business, it all kind of ties together. So if I'm consulting, I'm telling you, hey, well, what is your process? You know, what is your SOPs? How long does it take you to complete a job? How much are you charging for it? How much does it cost you per hour to stay open? So as we start talking about these things, we start really getting into your process of how you're detailing. So if I'm gonna consult with you, I'm gonna go into your process. If you need help in your process, it's like, hey, take my training course, right? If I'm consulting with you about the chemical that you're using, once you take the training course, we're training you on our chemical. See what I'm saying? So it kind of all just runs together. And I've been doing training and education for a long time, but I kind of had this business model in my head, and I went to other companies with it, and nobody wanted to pick it up.
So you did it yourself?
And they basically turned me into their competitors.
In true Jeff fashion.
So now I'm competing with, you know, a lot of the big dogs, and I got a lot of support. There's a lot of people who are on board, from LA to Texas to Florida to Carolina to Chicago and New York. And that's just, you know, before I even got the website up. You know what I'm saying? So once this thing launches, it's really going to take off. And another part of that is, you know, when you look at the detailing industry, you don't see a lot of minorities in leadership or training positions, right? So I realized that with the minorities, there's a lot who are kind of at the bottom of the economical pole, you know, in detailing, and it's because they lack the education, right? And they don't want to, you know, like, it's like people want to associate with people who look like them or talk like them, right? So if you predominantly have an industry full of Caucasian people in the training platform, no offense to anybody, but if you have that, that's what you're going to attract. And then if you look at the industry, you start to see like, oh wow, like it's really kind of unbalanced. So I felt like, you know, being that minority trainer and being that face, it'll probably encourage a lot more to pursue the education, because education is what, you know, helped me. You know, I started on the Detail King platform and I didn't know anything about detailing at all. So I started with education. I see how it's elevated me. And when I look at, you know, a lot of the minorities, they all call me, you know, kind of look up to me and stuff. And when I'm talking to them, I ask them, the first thing I ask them, well, you know, what training have you had? And they don't pursue the training.
Yeah.
And that's probably why, you know. And so I was like, I'm gonna switch the game up.
That's the right move.
I'm gonna change it up, man.
Yep.
And we're bringing, you know, the whole, I mean, we're not like, okay, hey, we're only focused on minorities at all, no. But we definitely want to incorporate that business model of
products, training, consult,
everything.
all around.
All the way around.
I love it.
So yeah,
We're stoked
Agape
for
Pro
you.
is, we're using a bunch of different manufacturers, and you know, we really plan to hit hard, man. Hit hard, and not take nobody out. Just offer, you know, another option, another solution, and helps a lot of people be successful. I mean, that's the whole point. I like helping people, obviously, right? That's all I've been doing for the last 16, 17 years. I just built a business model around it, around my industry, you know, and I got stuff from there. You know, from there I'm going into construction and, you know, real estate, and then ultimately I want to go into technology. So
Love it, man.
I'm an entrepreneur, man, all day.
Trust me, I know. Well, Jeff, bro, you're beyond inspiring, truthfully, and it's an honor to call you a friend and you know, be in your presence and to hear your story. And I really appreciate you opening up as much as you did. And I'm gonna wait for the cameras to turn off so I can hear about the incriminating side of the stories too. But thank you, bro.
Hey, appreciate you,
really
man.
do appreciate it.
Good time.
Yeah, thank everyone at You're Able, Michael, Chris, Kyle. Thank you to Cineskill for helping us put this together. Make sure you sign up for the free 30-day trial. And as always, guys, keep shining.
Hold on, I just thought about something.
Uh-oh.
We need to tell them about You're Able.
Oh, you know, I gotta look at it right there.
Okay.
Give it to them. This is your moment.
I am a major advocate for You're Able, okay? If you need any advice or you want to talk to somebody who knows the inside scoop on how the software works, call me. Because when I tell you, I had this business model already in my head of how the calendar should look and how you should arrange your appointments. And I've been searching around in the industry forever. I mean, ever. There was no software in the industry, period. We were detailers trying to use mechanic software, but we couldn't afford it because we don't generate the same revenue that mechanic shops do, right? Then what's the other software? We're going into retail. We're using QuickBooks, point of sale, stuff like that. So now you're trying to take a retail software and turn it into a service-based industry. Just doesn't work. Okay, within my company, I was running like 3 different softwares just to function in business. All right, I don't know.
You're good. Anywhere you want.
But running 3 different softwares just to function in business, and it was like so time consuming. I mean, I set one appointment would take me 10, 15 minutes just to schedule one appointment. And I'm out at SEMA one year, and I bump into the whole You're Able crew. And I'm like, oh, what's this? Okay. And I was like, I didn't know what they were talking about, but it seemed pretty cool. And I was like, okay, well, maybe I'll look further into it. And that was like November. So MTE follows that in Orlando. I bump into them again. And by this time, I meet the father, the daughter. I'm like, oh man, this is like a family business. I really like this. And you know, it just kind of made me feel at home. And I was like, okay, look, we're gonna get started. So then I look into the software like even deeper. And when I seen this calendar set up, okay, because I'm telling you, I used to draw this on a piece of paper. This is how I would teach my sales guys, like, look, this is what has to be in your head. I wish I had the know-how to create some type of digital platform to set this up, but I was like, this is what is in my head. And I blocked out like an 8-hour schedule. And I would say, hey, if you set a gold package and it takes 5 hours, you need to look at it like, hey, these 5 hours are taken. Now you have this amount of hours, you got 3 hours left in that day. So what type of appointment can you schedule? I was like, because you want to make your schedule so tight. You know, you want to execute as much as you can, and you want to individualize each employee's schedule. You know what I'm saying? And I seen their layout on this calendar. I was like, oh my God, this is it. This is exactly what I was talking about. And I mean, I went crazy. And I started using the software. It took us a long time to transition out of 3 different softwares into one. But I mean, one software took away 3 different softwares. And I had an office assistant at the time. I had just hired her maybe 6 months prior because of all the legwork that it required to function on a daily basis. And the funny thing about it is I had my office assistant set all the stuff up with your able and everything, and then probably a month or 2 after she sets up the software, sets your able up, I was like, why did I hire you again? Because she didn't do anything. I mean, we're setting appointments and I mean, it's taking like less than 3 minutes. We set an appointment, identify the person who's doing the job. You get all the information right from the person over the phone. By the time we hang up the phone, this person's on the schedule. They're getting notified about when their appointment is. They're getting reminders prior to it showing up. I mean, it was just mind blowing. And then all these other people tried to come out and imitate your able. Don't be fooled, okay? This app, okay, you have to look into an app. Think about it. If you don't have an app for your software, how are you getting notifications, okay? I'm flying around, I'm going to different trainings all over the United States. I'm getting pings on my phone like, okay, that job's completed. Oh, what's the name just made a payment. I mean, it's just ridiculous. So if you need any help, any support on your able, you need somebody to give you a testimony, call me. Trust me. I'm a major advocate.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I'm getting fired after this one. I don't know why I'm here anymore. So, guys, nice seeing you. Jeff, you did great. Enjoy the next year's story, guys. See you in the next one.
All right. It's a wrap.
It's a wrap. Get out of frame. See you around.
How did we do?
That was great. That was awesome.
All right, man.